Ed Worley's the first on, saying cheers from down in SoCal. Welcome, Ed. Pedro Foiling Sailor in Sydney. Down under, fixing the solar-powered fridge on the boat this morning to keep Jody Shields beers cool. John Emmett from Villamor in Portugal. Ken Sabin in Toledo, Ohio. Greg Phillips from the Gold Coast in Queensland, in Oz. We have a great guest today, Beau Vrolyk, the Commodore, newly installed Commodore of St. Francis, standing by via Skype from just 3 or 4 blocks away from us. Jonathan Frank in Galveston, Galveston, as we are going to get this one off the dock in about 5 seconds. Welcome.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Warren Schasser in Brisbane, saying good morning, Tom and Julia. Gordon Smith in Denmark, Copenhagen. Clark Chapin, Plymouth, Michigan, where it's again wintry. Speaking to my mother, Ann Arbor. Luca Craig down in Auckland. Greetings, got the wetsuits on as it's wet here, very wet in Auckland. Welcome to show number 587 for Friday the 27th of January 2023. Delighted to have you with us. I'm Tom. This is my co-hostess. Hostess, is that the right word? Co-host. Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, my esteemed landlady and longtime friend, also a St. Francis Yacht Club member, Julia Vedekint. Graham Sweeney checking in from Yell in Scotland, Great Britain, way up there in the north. Fritz Mueller down in Miami, and on and on and on. Julia, I trust you are well.
I am, amazingly enough.
We're live from the Beach Street Yacht Club. Beau was commenting about the Burgee earlier. He likes your Burgee, Commodore.
Oh, well, that's good.
Notwithstanding, it's the St. Francis Yacht Club Burgee that my daughter, Meg, took the St. Francis Burgee and replaced the stars with
the
guitar and the wine glass, the red wine glass at that. Okay, let's get this one on the road. We are in the pre-start now. Again, that's the Toronto Island Sailing Club. We like that slide. And I should have asked Beau if he recognized that town. We're going to bring Beau in right away as our co-host today. Commodore, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
Now, you're this year, you've got an apartment now in San Francisco. You live down in Santa Cruz, which is what, normally a couple-hour drive, hour and a half?
Hour and a half.
Down at the end of the South Bay. But in the year of the Commodore, you got an apartment here, a nice apartment in Telegraph Hill, one hears.
Yep. Yeah, the commute was just not going to be viable given how many days of the week I'm at the club.
When we were talking with Julia here in the pre-show, it's a huge commitment of time.
It is, and people nod their head and say, "Oh, yes, I know," but I mean, you could spend 40 to 60 hours a week on that job.
Is that what you're planning on, Beau?
Well, it's hopefully going to be less than that, but probably not. I aspire to do what Commodore Crocker did. He had his schooner Zaka built, and about 4 months into his Commodore year, he just climbed on the schooner and left. And thought, I'm out of here.
Did you know Commodore Crocker, Julia?
No, he was a bit before my time.
Oh, he was.
But he said he was doing his duty to spread the word of the St. Francis Yacht Club around the world. And that's what he was doing.
And I think he came back like a year or two later, and they made him Commodore again. So, you don't get out of it that easily.
Well, let's carry on here with the pre-show, the pre-start rather. I want to thank very much our Fozy Lily Zhu, Golden Lily, who was on, gave us that little instruction on how to pronounce Happy New Year and Year of the Rabbit in Mandarin. Lily, the gold medalist from the 2016 games, also was a bronze medalist in the 2012, I beg your pardon, 2012 games, bronze medalist in the 2008 games in China. She's now an esteemed and sought after sports commentator. She went to Southampton University. Of course, she's married to our Fozy John Emmett. And she is doing a terrific job in China, in Mandarin, reporting on the ocean race within China and getting a lot of ink for that.
Yes.
She was terrific, wasn't she?
Absolutely.
I want to thank her again for joining us on Tuesday's show. And yesterday One of the best sailors. I mean, when you ask anybody who was the best sailor in this country, two names at least, Beau, come to mind. Who would they be?
Well, Ullman for one, and Buddy the other one.
How about Dennis?
Yeah.
That's not because of the Blackall or Connor rivalry, is it?
Oh no, nothing like that.
Okay. Well, Buddy Melgus, the Wizard of Zendas, Wisconsin, certainly among the very best sailors in my generation, our generation, Beau, Julia, to come out of this country. Want to wish him a very happy birthday. This nice photo by Phil Ewell from out in Hawaii, who was embedded with America Cubed for years. And Buddy yesterday turned 93. So
amazing
birthday to him. There's a documentary coming out very soon. And there's a trailer, I think. And as soon as we get the trailer, we'll run it here on the show. Do you know what day it is today, Julia? Here's your first clue. Beau?
Throne Day.
Throne Day. It's not because the Commodore. This is not Commode Day. Beau, do you have any idea what day it is? And this is a real holiday. I'm not kidding. Our friends in the UK will know.
Is it Toilet Day? Is that
close? You saw that maybe in the show notes.
Yeah.
This is your first and only clue. Curry Day, Gordon Smith is saying. No, I hope it's not Curry Day. Gordon Smith, where did you get that?
Yeah, I've had some curry that caused me to utilize that throw.
Chris Exley's on. Look at, they're coming now. James Frederick Bland down in Texas. He knew it's John Crapper Day. Not quite, almost. Clark Chapin got it. Thomas Crapper Day. The Americans got it. Where are the Brits? Gordon Smith, where are you? I mean, this guy cannot be all bad if his name is Thomas, right? You know who Thomas Crapper was, Julia?
Yes.
Who was he?
He invented the toilet.
Not really.
Didn't?
No, close. Thomas Crapper, who is British, lived during, we like to take something from AC 0, 1851. We look at the middle of the 1800s. Thomas Crapper lived from 1836 to the ripe old age of whatever that was, dying in 1910. And yes, indeed, today is Thomas Crapper Day. And according to our Farmer's Almanac, since 1818, January 27th celebrates Thomas Crapper Day. Thomas Crapper was a London plumber who, in the 1860s, popularized the flush toilet in sanitary plumbing and made toilets and bathroom fixtures a global success. You believe that?
Yes.
Beau?
Oh yeah, look at the altitude of that water tank. There must have been a lot of pressure coming out of that thing.
Julia, do you believe it?
Yep.
Well, I invite you now to our regular segment known as Correct or Croutonic.
Oh, is it not true?
See, we always have a Correct or Croutonic segment, Beau. Glad to see you laughing at that. Our good friend Jody Shields down in Wangi in Australia, north of Sydney. He is the honorary host of this segment. And I ask you all, is it correct or croutonic? It has often been claimed in popular culture that the profane slang term for human bodily, Beau, you never know what we're going to cover on this show. So.
In case anybody ever asks.
It has often been claimed in popular culture that the profane slang term for human bodily waste, crap, originated with Thomas Crapper because of his association with lavatories. A common version of this story is that American servicemen stationed in England during World War I saw his name on cisterns and used it as Army slang, i.e., I'm going to the Crapper. Now, I ask you, is that correct or croutonic? Julia, ladies first.
Well, I've heard it so often, I think it is true.
Beau, is it correct or croutonic?
I think it's correct because it's just been repeated so often. Who cares what the real facts are?
Well, I'm pleased to say that it's croutonic.
Oh.
It's absolutely not true.
Oh.
And it is popular lore, a toilet program with a sailing problem, James Frederick Bland is saying. Yes, that's true. My mother's house had a crapper, Gordon Smith said, a mahogany seat and a wood. Well, look at everybody's going on. Farmhouse toilets are a bit like that. Mueller says it's correct. It is not correct. Gordon Smith spelling the German spelling with a K, correct. No, it's not correct. The word crap is actually of Middle English origin and predates its application to bodily waste. Its most likely etymological origin say that a few times.
Etymological.
Etymological origin is a combination of two older words, the Dutch, crappen, to pluck off, cut off, or separate, and the Old French crapé, I guess, or crappa, siftings, waste, or rejected matter from the medieval Latin crappa. In English, it was used to refer to chaff and also to weeds or other rubbish. Therefore, I declare it's Croutonic, that former.
Oh.
It wasn't the American soldiers coming back from World War I. It's not true.
Oh.
It's Croutonic. What do you think, Beau? Did you have any idea? I didn't show you this in the tech check. You probably would have left.
You sure didn't.
You wouldn't
have
carried
That's
on.
great.
Clark
Well,
Chapin, maybe
remind-
that's what led Thomas into plumbing as a career. Okay. Everybody, okay, Julia, get your finger ready. You got to give everybody a collective, a wave of the finger for all these comments. They're not correct. The comments are not correct. Beau, anything last words of wisdom on this before we move forward?
Well, every good sailor knows you got to know how to fix one of those when you're at sea.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay. That gets us to the starting line. Thank goodness. And the 2022 Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race, I love that image from this year in the harbor. And gets us also to the Coach's Corner, our regular feature at the top of the show in the A block here with John Emmett, who checks in again today from Vila Moura in Portugal.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Going to take you for a little walk at the advice of my expert media wife. Going to go a little bit slowly this time, so as not to make you all feel so seasick. But I am, as anyone will know, always in a hurry and normally quite a fast walker, and possibly a fast talker as well, but there we go. I'm going to say good morning. Perhaps that's quite obvious from the daylight we have. Early bird catches the worm, and we're trying to get out in the morning breeze because as the land heats up, it's not actually getting hot enough really for thermal. So unfortunately, what's tending to happen is the wind is just disappearing. So we need to make a decision to do an early or a late as we move into our last week here in sunny Vila Moura. Got to be said, one of my favourite training venues, and I think I secretly quite like it when it's like this and it's so quiet. Makes everything so much easier. And in fact, actually, I like it not only because the logistics and everything get cheaper, but it's just easier to do things like cycles and everything when it's not so busy. It's not just the sailing and being able to park your rib right in the ramp. Need to be careful doing the walk around the boat park because the girls are probably starting to get changed. And we have a small squad of sailors here you see in the background. I say small, I think probably every single ILCA 6 sailor who's here at the moment is training with us, because some sailors will be having a break. And that break, as we said, is very important to keep the enthusiasm up and also to do other things, to do the other real life things that we have to get done. So the plan is to go out, we're going to do a bit of speed work, bit of starting work and take advantage of having the group. And this is one of the most important things about a squad system. I mean, everything has advantages and disadvantages, but most of the really successful teams will not only have one good sailor, they will have a squad of sailors. So if you look at in ILCA, sort of the British or the Australians have a good group of sailors, and those small countries, and there's no reason why the small countries can't succeed, will tend to have a squad where they put multinationals, so the Norwegians and the Finnish share coaches and have that really close working relationship. And then you have countries where it's one sailor per country, for example, with Tonchi and Pavos and that group, where there's actually lots of countries getting together for a big squad and all sharing a coach. And you can see that particular squad, they have somebody there medaling. I think pretty much every regatta, and success breeds success. It's always easy to work with highly motivated people. And I think a lot of that motivation deep down needs to come from the sailor, realizing that the hard work will eventually lead the rewards. If you go to the gym for 1 hour, you're not going to notice a lot of improvement. In fact, 1 week or even 1 month, not a lot of improvement. You do it consistently for a year, that's when you get the improvement. So the squad is really important because not only do you need a motivated coach and a motivated sailor, but you need everybody within that group to have that common belief, that common, oh, John's opportunity to get run over. No, survived. That common belief, that common desire to win, and that's why the smarter goals are so important. As I said, February will be our month to grow, and you know, there's lots more of these little things I want to cover to help people not only with their sailing, but a lot of real life situations. You know, when we say, you know, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, this isn't only about a wind shift on a race course. You know, it's about organising your holiday during the pandemic or whatever. So hopefully it's all useful. Next week, last week in Villamora, and I will see you all on the show.
John Emmett caught me by surprise there with that ending. Nice job, John. Thank you very much. That, of course, from John Emmett Sailing. Get to the front of the fleet, our regular segment at the top of the show. We appreciate, as always, John coming on. The drinking contest is on. I saw Jeff Ogle, who is in Annapolis, saying, "Thank God it's Friday and it's stubble, so they're drinking." Beau, there's a bit of a drinking game depending upon if John is clean shaven or not. And today, the word was that his hair now is the shortest we've seen it.
Yeah,
Quite some time.
yeah.
So he's got stubble both on top and the bottom. John Emmett Sailing, get to the front of the fleet. Thanks, John. And he likes to say, Julia.
Yes, take this very opportunity to like, follow, and share, beginning at the program so people won't miss the important.
Yeah, share it right now, please, to your Facebook page. If you're watching on YouTube, likewise to your YouTube channel. Much appreciated. Do you know, Julia or Beau, what day, 27 January, this day in history, here is your first clue, from 1820.
Not a clue.
Not a clue. Julia, does this help? The Russian warships Mirny, I guess you say it, Mirny, and Vostok from 1820. And no, this is not in honor of the war in Ukraine or Mr. Putin or anybody else, Beau. Here's your second, Beau. Here's your second clue. He's not a Commodore. He was an admiral. He was from Estonia, actually, originally, and was an esteemed Russian admiral, Fabian Gottlieb von Bellinghausen. We've talked about him on the show before. Remember that, Julia? We've talked about him. Lived 1779 to died the year after AC0, after the first America's Cup.
Lest we forget,
around the Isle of Wight. He participated in the 1803-06 Russian circumnavigation of the globe, Russia's first, and became the leader of another circumnavigation group that discovered Antarctica. Apparently the first European, maybe the first human, to see Antarctica in 1820. He was not the first to go below the Antarctic Circle. You know who that was?
Yes.
Captain Cook. We covered that on the show not too long ago. Russian Antarctic Expedition, 1820, Russian Antarctic Expedition led by Fabian, I love to say his name, Gottlieb von Bellinghausen, and Mikhail Lazarev discover the continent of Antarctica on this day, 27 January, 1820. Commodore?
So, Tom, I would just point out that he was the first guy to go there, find it, and get back alive.
Fair enough.
That is the best applause line of the day.
Yeah.
We told you Commodore Vrolyk would be a lot of fun to have on the
Indeed.
show. What are going on with the comments? Age appropriate. Bland is saying John's look is age appropriate. Grand Sweeney, he's growing his own balaclava. Squad system. Yeah, they're talking serious note here. Gordon Smith saying that the squad system that John was referring to is really has so many benefits when you're doing Olympic training or a lot of other training. Beau, do you want to comment on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, it is so much help, especially the tune-up. I mean, and then we all get down and tired and stuff. And usually somebody in the squad is still bright and cheery, cheers everybody up, gets them going.
Exactly right. Jody Shields, did someone say drinking? Yeah, it's Saturday morning down under. What time is it in Sydney? 08:20. Perth, it's 05:20 in the morning. Gottlieb. Peter Stevenson, a.k.a. Pedro Foiling Sailor Gottlieb, invented pinball. Have you ever played on a Gottlieb pinball machine?
No.
Oh, yeah, growing up. Did you, Beau? Remember the
Pinball machine? Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I love them.
What else is going on here in the comments? The Friday comments are always the best because it's Saturday down under. It's Friday night in Europe, and
Stingray says, "I'm glad Von, whatever his name is, didn't get to name it."
Okay, be whatever his name is. Is Beau's brother named Luke? Bill Wingrove is
Nope.
asking. Who is Luke Vrolyk?
Don't know. There are a bunch of Vrolyks, including a pretty good yacht designer. So there are a lot of Vrolyks around in Holland.
Now, Julia, do you want to tell Beau about your Vrolyk story?
No.
Of the yacht designer?
No.
Yes, you can. It involves St. Francis. It involves the famous yacht designer who was my neighbor.
Yes, well, he stayed.
He was my neighbor
Yeah.
in Hamburg,
Yeah.
and he was a Lingy designer for years.
Yeah, he stayed with us when he was here racing.
And his name is?
I've forgotten.
It's
Yeah.
Rolf.
It's Rolf,
Rolf.
R-O-L-F.
Yeah.
And he spells his name differently. He's
Yeah.
not a relation to yours, is he? It's
Yeah, yeah.
V-R-O-L-J-K, right?
L-I-J-K. Yeah, I-J is a diphthong in Dutch. And so when my grandfather arrived on Ellis Island, he wrote in script I and a J and put a dot over each one. And some guy at the immigration facility said, "We don't use umlauts here," and he erased the dots. But there are a lot of
What a
Dutch
great
people-
That is a great story.
It's absolutely true. And so, well, let's put it this way. According to my grandfather, it's absolutely true. He's not around to check up on
So
things
you
anymore.
are related to Rolf Vrolyk.
Oh, distantly. I mean, somehow. There are not that many Vrolyks around.
No.
Julia, can you tell the rest of your story?
No.
He used to stay here at the Beach Street Yacht Club.
Yeah, well, I
Rolf,
said
right? You said that, but he used to stay here,
Yes.
but he often didn't come home, you said.
Yes.
You told me that the other night.
I did. He had adventures other than here at
Well,
night.
you know what they say, Beau, right here. Those sailors around the world who've sailed here in San Francisco know about the triangle, not the Bermuda Triangle. You know about the triangle, Beau?
Yes.
Balboa
there are
Cafe in that corner
yes.
where
there are
sailors
plenty of
go and
places.
get lost.
Yeah. Or they get lost temporarily.
Well, temporarily, they get lost to cougars in Pacific Heights, I think.
Yeah.
Boy, we are off. We are really
Yes,
off on
I
a
gotta
tangent.
say.
John Schaefer in Annapolis saying, "Isn't that where frolicking came from?"
Yeah.
Yes,
So
indeed.
Here's a fun fact for you, Tom. The word vrolijk in Dutch means happy. And so you say vrolijk Christmas if you want to say happy Christmas
Yeah,
to
same
somebody.
in German. Yeah.
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 So frolicking apparently is an English word that comes from the Dutch word frolic. While we're on Dutch, and you know where the word yacht comes from,
Yeah.
Yes.
And schooner as well.
and schooner, but yacht is a small pleasure craft, and
Yeah.
that's why I insist that our sport is not sailing; it's yacht racing. And I think a Sunfish and an Optimist are yachts, and Beau's Mayan is a yacht, and the Swan 115 that we've been talking about is a yacht, right, Beau?
Sure. I mean, it's the definitions of words. People just make it up, Tom. You can make it up too.
Well, like crutonic is the only thing I ever made up. That's the only word I ever made up. Ken Saban is saying that Matt Struble won both the DN and the DN, which stands for Detroit News. Did you know that, Beau? The DN
No.
Ice Boats was a design competition by the Detroit News back in the 30s, I think. Clark Chapin will know. And like the Optimus Dinghy, which was a design competition by somebody will know down in Florida, probably somebody. But it was to design a boat that you could build in your garage that was flat, slab-sided and had hard chines. And the DN Ice Boat is thus, and it's the most popular ice boat in the world. They just had their championships in North America, I think in Wisconsin. Ken Saban would know, he's in Toledo. Finger whack for triangles, James
Yes.
Frederick Bland. James, that was not 30. The triangle, it's like the Bermuda Triangle where people get lost. Gavin Newsom's joined, Alex Kent. You can't keep a straight face, Commodore. I'm going to tell a quick story about Beau. Julia, you know this, but the Stag Cruise, which is some of you have been on St. Francis Yacht Club's annual retreat for men. And they also have a women's cruise too, which is the same sort of thing. And this year I had the honor and privilege of producing the member show. I've done that a few times and helped others do it. And you try to make each one a little unique. And this year I said, okay, I'll do it. This was a year ago. I said, I'll do it for 2022 if all three Commodores will appear in it, and the chairman of the board and his man. We've always tried to get staff Commodores. To tell you all what a great guy Beau is, he not only agreed to appear, and he talked as the Commodore, he was then vice, and he talked the Commodore and the rear Commodore into appearing in the show. But I said, here's what we're going to do, and America's Got Talent, like Britain's Got Talent, and he's got talent shows, and we're going to have a dozen acts, 10 acts, something, and I want you to come on as somebody, some rock and roll group, and we settled on the Stones, right? We've lost Beau. Oh, there he is.
No, I'm here.
We settled on the Stones, and they came out and sang, I kid you not.
Yes.
I can't, well, you can do it. Get no satisfaction.
Yeah.
I can't
song.
get no girly action. And
Yeah,
Beau
yeah.
and the Commodore and the rear, and Beau plays a guitar. He's really quite a good guitarist and singer.
Yeah.
Now, it was Milli Vanilli, as he said. We had the stage band play it, but Beau came out with his guitar. And their act, Beau, your act won.
Yes.
Tinsley's Got Talent. True?
True.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe the judges might have had a little bias, but yeah, we pulled it out, and I think the audience enjoyed it.
Yeah, but come on, man. The audience voted. We narrowed, the judges narrowed it down to 2 acts, you and the chairman of the board and a past Commodore, Sean Svensson. And then the audience, by acclamation, we put it to them,
Right.
the MC,
Yeah.
who was Mick Jagger, a club member playing Mick Jagger, Risley Sams, put it to the audience, and it was clear. I had applause ready to go. You know, I'm backstage, and I had applause ready to go in case it needed reinforcing if the audience was not cheering for you. But they did, and you won it.
Yes.
Well, it was great. I think some of the comedy lines from the judges were absolutely fantastic too. But I don't want to get a finger wag.
Well, let's see what other comments before we get into this, because we got a lot to talk. We're an hour and a half, a half hour into the show already, and we got a lot to talk about. It will be fun having you on here, Commodore. Thank you. You're let's see, the third Commodore, Julia. Let's see, Beau, the third St. Francis Commodore we've had on here. We have the New York Commodore.
Yeah.
Three New York Commodores, one time or another. So, well, great to have you on. Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, half an hour in, Commodore Beau Vrolyk here from the States. Grew up in SoCal, LA Yacht Club, sailed most, if not all of his life. He has just last Tuesday been installed as the Commodore of St. Francis Yacht Club, one of the most prestigious clubs, certainly in this country, if not the world. And we're delighted to have him from just across town. He's at his apartment here in San Francisco, where he's got a pied à terre for this year because he's going to spend so much time at the club, Beau.
Right.
Sure, get my money's worth.
As I was saying, you were just installed last Tuesday night. Here you are with our immediate past Commodore, or what we on the West Coast, or at least in SoCal in California, call the Junior Staff Commodore. There aren't very many clubs that call them Staff Commodores. Most of the rest of the world calls them past Commodores. And the immediate past Commodore, here we call them the Staff Commodores. And the immediate past Commodore is the Junior Staff Commodore. That, of course, Peter Gilmore, who did a terrific job as Commodore. And you've got tough shoes to fill, Beau.
They're large too.
He's a big boy.
He is.
Yeah.
He's not standing on a box in that shot, is he?
No. Pete belongs on our basketball team for sure, and I do not.
What will you do differently than he?
Oh, well, Pete and I have a very different set of personality types and all the rest. Well, we got along fabulously. We discovered that we both have sons who are Eagle Scouts, and anybody who's ever been through that with a kid, it changes you. What's different? I like to race a lot. In fact, my kids grew up understanding that if there were 2 boats within sight of each other, that was the definition of a race.
Oh, yes.
And Pete's more of a cruiser. but we get along famously, and I'm just basically continuing on with the good stuff he started.
He was a terrific Commodore. And of course, it's been a tough, Kenny Glidewell before him, it's been a tough patch because of COVID for not just our club, but for all the clubs. I know Balboa Yacht Club down in Newport Beach, arguably San Diego Yacht Club and the other SoCal clubs, which could just move everything outdoors all the time because of the nice weather, maybe had a little bit easier time of it. But let's talk about your yacht, Mayan, because it is a famously cool boat. We talked about it on the show in the context of David Crosby a couple of weeks ago, but I thought now that we have Beau on, we should reprise this. The 59-foot Alden schooner built in 1947. Tell us about it.
Well, she was built to a 1928 design by John Alden. She's a centerboarder. So she was made for the thin water off of the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, Florida. She only draws 4.5 feet, which is startling to people to see us lumber into some place. And at any rate, she was built in, which I think we'll talk about later, but she was built in Honduras, what was then British Honduras.
Let's get to that in a sec, but tell us about the famous previous owner. And of course, David Crosby sold it to you, what, in 2015, I think I read?
14, but that's
14?
right.
Okay.
Close enough. Yeah. David, obviously the guy on the left there. David took care of the boat for 46 years. He took amazing care of the boat. It was a bit run down when he bought it, and he rebuilt it that time. He rebuilt it 2 other times. Most recently, in 2005, she was relaunched with all new planking. About 70% of her frames were replaced, all her floor frames. Thank heavens, Wayne Ettle, who did the work, preserved her interior. So she still feels like a boat designed in 1928, which is great. It's exactly what we wanted. But she's rock hard now and incredibly strong as a result of the rebuild.
I've been below, and it is gorgeous.
Yeah,
gorgeous,
she's a lovely girl.
She is.
So David,
go ahead.
It was interesting just talking about Mayan and David. He had the boat on the market for quite a while, and we had looked at 12 different Alden schooners around the United States. And because I grew up crewing on one named Sallee, which is no longer with us. Sallee has the interesting side effect of being the place that the Storm Trysail Club was founded. It was founded in her main saloon after a Bermuda race. But anyway, we're looking at all these schooners, and David was asking a very high price. And the guy who restored Mayan said, you should just write him a letter and give him your sailing resume. Tell him you'll take care of the boat. Tell him I vouch for you, and see what happens. So we did, and 2 days later the phone rang, and it was David's very distinctive voice saying, hey, you want to buy my boat? I said, yeah. And he said, well, why don't you come down to Santa Barbara and we'll eat some tacos and talk about it. So we did, and that started a long process of acquiring the boat.
But there was one particular caveat, if I remember well.
Well, there was about a year-long process of, after we had agreed to the price, the contract, the whole thing was all done. The boat broker would take the paperwork to David's house and give it to him, and he would say, yeah, I'll sign it, but not right now. So, and then a few days later, he would call me on the phone, and he was in tears and said, I just can't bring myself to sell the boat. It has been my safe place in the world through, as many of you know, a really tumultuous life, in and out of prison, lots of drug addiction, all kinds of problems. But when he was on Mayan, he felt safe and he felt secure. And so finally, after close to a year, I just said, David, what is the hang up here? We're being patient about this, but we do want to go sailing. And he said, well, look, I had promised my youngest son, Django, that we would sail to Hawaii. And now I'm just going to sell the boat and I won't be able to fulfill that promise. And so I said, well, that's ridiculous. Let's just sail the boat to Hawaii. Bring Django, you, everybody. I mean, who in their right mind wouldn't want to sail to Hawaii with David Crosby?
Exactly.
And he cracked up and just said, okay, you're serious? I said, I will put that in writing. So we actually came to an agreement where we agreed that every time we took Mayan anywhere, we would drop him an email and tell him where we were going, and he's welcome to come along. And we did, up until just when I just learned he died. Every single time Mayan went anywhere, including from Santa Cruz to San Francisco or back, we would send him an email. And every time within an hour or two, he would reply saying, I'm in Toronto, I'm in London, I'm on tour, I'm in the recording studio, whatever. He never showed up. And it was sad that he didn't, but he admitted in phone conversations that he just couldn't take it. He just couldn't come to see her again.
Beau, there's a lot of people on here saying you should write a book. Bill Porter, Ken Saban. Right. Beau should write a book. Now, really, the blog, you have a blog on Medium, right? Medium.com is what's the name of the blog?
It's Schooner Mayan. If you just Google Schooner Mayan, it'll turn up. That's a unique enough name. And also it's got a Facebook page, which we kind of use to keep the crew all current. Mayan has collected quite a crew. To Racer, we have a typical crew of about 18. But the group of people who have sailed on her and who are considered the crew is now 150 plus.
Wow. Well, it's a cool boat. We're going to talk some more about it in a sec. Let's talk a little bit more about the late, great David Crosby. He had a big influence on my rock and roll career, I would say. I love that group. And when we were in the tech check, by the way, I heard you playing The Doors. Right? Light My Fire.
That was on the radio, yep.
Yeah. One of the great songs of all time. Singer, songwriter, guitarist David Crosby, a founding member of two popular and enormously influential 60s rock units, the Byrds and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, later joined by Young, has died. His representative says this was 2 weeks ago now. He was 81 years old. The cause of death had not been revealed. The death came as a surprise to those who followed his very active Twitter account, which he'd kept tweeting on as recently as Wednesday, a couple days before he passed. One of Crosby's final tweets the day before he died was to make a typically jocular comment about heaven. I heard the place is overrated. Cloudy.
That's David.
Yeah.
He was wicked smart and had a terrific sense of humor. That sense of humor could also be used as a knife if he didn't like you. But he was always incredibly polite and kind to us, and has admitted publicly many times that the people he worked with, his bandmates, really they none of them got along with him. Over the years, they broke up with every one of them. But in a sailing venue, and people don't realize he learned to sail as a kid in Santa Barbara, and he's the son of a famous cinematographer who won a Grammy. Oscar. Sorry, I'll get it right the last time. It's an Oscar for High Noon. He was a cinematographer on that. So David grew up in a family of performers, and he was just an incredible talent.
Now, did we ever tell you Julia's story about David Crosby and his brother?
No.
Tell the Commodore.
David Crosby was a neighbor of mine.
In Carpinteria.
In Carpinteria, not Santa Barbara, Carpinteria.
Mm-hmm.
And his older brother was a contemporary of mine, Chip Crosby, who was a drummer. Mm. And I grew up knowing his family. But David was the little brother. He was my little brother's age, and they were pests that age. So, but
Julia, you're famous. You dated not only Crosby's brother, you dated Dave Brubeck's brother, didn't you?
No.
I thought you said you did.
No, Dave. It was his.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get into that.
Yeah, no. He was around.
Beau, on this show, half the time Julie she'll forget to turn her phone off, and then her phone rings, and she gets calls from boyfriends all day, every day. Now she says, she looks on her phone. She says, "Oh, it's a doctor. It's not a boyfriend." This guy was a hoot. And anything else to say about him? You did spend a fair bit of time with him, and must have become pretty good friends.
Well, we did. David's not a lot of time, but certainly enough to really admire the guy. He looks a little bit like a pixie, and he had a sense of humor like a pixie, and that was very entertaining. But he also was just very, very direct with folks, and some folks can't take that. But it was he gets full credit for keeping Mayan alive. As you know, it's kind of irrational to take an old boat like this and just keep fixing it. but some of us are cursed with this addiction, and
Mhm.
this is just one of them. Anyway, David was fabulous. He was my personal favorite composer at both the Byrds and Crosby, Stills and Nash. Um, he's been inducted into the Hall of Fame, Music Hall of Fame, twice, both
Yeah.
bands.
Yeah.
And some of his songs are just incredible. But if what's really most people don't know is he had a long run as a producer and a backup singer. He did backup singing for all kinds of people, and it's worth checking it out in some of the
And
books.
you being a musician will understand why. And I think I said it on the show when we did this little feature about the passing of David Crosby. You know why he was in such demand?
No.
Because of his harmonization. He could
Oh,
harmonize beautifully and close harmony.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
just apparently astonishingly good. Well, that's the man. There are a lot of comments on here, and as Julia likes to say, go back and read the comments because we only get a handful of them passing through here. Beau owns Mayan. Stingray up in Seattle is saying, jealous! Exclamation point.
Yes.
Graham Sweeney, we're going to get to the construction of the boat in a sec. Remind me about hemp caulking. Alex Kent, who you know, Commodore, Alex Kent is on, and he's saying a new sail plan which simplifies and performs better. Is that right?
Well, somewhere before David bought the boat, it had been turned into a staysail schooner. And as we all know, what's considered the best rig and the best sailing is almost 50% fashion versus actual engineering. And so when Starling Burgess came out with the Advance, which was a schooner that just won every race it entered, it changed the rig. Now here's Mayan rigged as a staysail schooner still. You can see she's flying a great big fisherman staysail between the masts and a large Genoa. And this is when we were winning the Master Mariners race in, I think it was 2017. And nothing, this is a reach. Nothing reaches as effectively as a schooner. And so, that's the way she was rigged when we bought her. David at the time and I discussed doing this, which is putting her rig back the way that John Alden originally designed it. And this is particularly fun. This is last year's Rolex Big Boat Series in San Francisco Bay. And this is Mayan crossing tacks with the 8-meter Yucca, which for those of us in San Francisco know is an incredibly fast, well-sailed boat. And after however many years it had been, 8 years, we managed to get the rig tuned up and the crew tuned up and the sails and everything so that we could actually give Hank Esom a run for his money. And here we were going back and forth, crossing tacks this close together all the way up the city front, which was a real achievement for a schooner because they don't go upwind all that great. But at any rate, Hank is a great guy to compete with and a good friend of mine.
Let's go back to the the construction of the boat. It was built down in Belize City, which was, if I remember well, was British Honduras originally. Built in what, 47?
Yeah, she was launched and she was built in about 7 months, and she was launched in 47 and immediately sent to New York. She was actually built on spec. Paul Allen, the guy who had her built, was a Navy captain, and he had been stationed for all of World War II in the Aleutian Islands. And there's no place to spend money in the Aleutian Islands. And so he came home with a bag of money and wanted to buy a yacht, and there were no yachts because after World War II, they had either been used as like submarine patrol, or the people had pulled the Navy and Army had pulled the keels off them to use the lead for bullets. So what happened is there was a Scotsman that Paul Allen knew in Belize, and he met him. The guy I think was in the British military during the war. And he said, well, we build fishing boats. We can build a yacht. Just bring the plans. We'll build it. So this is the one and only yacht that was ever built by the Tui dockyard. And I know the grandson of the guy who built her. And he's got pictures of his grandfather helping him build a trimaran later in life. But the boat was built out of native Honduran mahogany, the real mahogany, which you really can't get anymore anywhere. We've cut it all down and made furniture out of it. And she was sailed to New York, and they put her in an ad in the New York Times, and she sold within a week. Paul Allen had raised some of the money for this from his dad, and he immediately said to his dad, let's go build another one. His father said, no, kid, get a real job. And so off, Paul.
So the question here is, it's a mahogany hull?
It was originally. Originally, she was built traditional carable planking with 4-inch wide by 1.5-inch thick mahogany planks, which were caulked, the old-fashioned way with oakum and tar. She is now double planked because you can't. Anyway, it's just a way better build technology. And she is the plank. The inner layer is Oroku, and the outer layer is Western red cedar. And that made the hull slightly lighter, but quite a bit stronger. And the two layers of the double planking are glued together with epoxy, which makes her just rock hard and strong as hell.
Cool.
She's double sawn frames, which when they replaced the frames, they replaced them with the original size. So that combined with the stronger hull surface has made the boat just incredibly rigid.
I guess we've answered Graham Sweeney's question. Does she have hemp caulking? I guess maybe originally, but not now.
She did in the old days.
Okay. Now, one last picture I love this picture of David Crosby.
Yeah.
Where was that taken? Is that down south somewhere?
Yeah, it looks
That's
like
Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
That is Santa Barbara.
Yeah, that's the entrance buoy, actually. The jetty is behind David. Yeah.
And he owned the boat some 40 years. How long?
46.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's also a few comments here about, non-sailors don't appreciate how attached we become to our boats, to our yachts, or at least some people, or maybe a lot of people do.
Yes. Well, yeah, this was, a boat like mine gets to you emotionally in a way that a plastic boat you're going to use for a couple of years and then move on to the next design just doesn't. And that's because the boat is designed so you spend months aboard it. Our grandchildren run around all over it. Our kids sail with us. I mean, the boat, well, there's another story about David. He was successful in selling his music portfolio to, I believe it was Sony that bought it from him. And he suddenly came into a lot of money, and he called me up and said, "I want to buy my boat back." And he offered an outrageously high price. And so I said, "Well, David," he said, "just think about it and talk to the family," and because he knows how much our family cares about the boat. And so I called him back a couple of days later. I said, "David, there's just no deal." And he said, "You got to be kidding. I thought you were a private equity guy. What in the world? I'm offering you this huge profit." I went, yeah. And at any rate, you're right. People do get emotionally bonded to their boats, especially these sort of more, emotionally evocative kinds of designs.
Speaking of which, Julia, you see Maura Stevens's comment. Beau Mora is a Fosey. Fosey. We didn't tell you what Fosey means. Friends of Sailing Illustrated.
Oh yeah. I know.
So we have all these Fosey around the world, and Maura's up in Nova Scotia, and she says, "A wooden schooner. Be still, my heart. We have a mahogany planked. 48-footer Marconi mainsail on a schooner really improves her upwind performance, but what it gains upwind, it loses going downwind."
Well, we could debate that for forever and ever. Part of the Mayan crew includes Bill Lee, who is a famous yacht designer. And
Fast as fun, Bill Lee from Santa Cruz,
right.
Your home club.
Yeah.
Yes, and the opposite of lightweight, ultralight boats is Mayan. She's 70,000 pounds. So, but we have worked long and hard with Bill and other people in the crew to get the boat tuned up to improve its performance. Having raced gaff-headed boats as well as Marconi schooners in both cases, I just disagree. I think that the improvement with it was made by a taller mainmast with a Marconi main for the same sail area is much more efficient all the time. But that's because you can fly a great big golly wobbler off of the mainmast and have a huge amount of sail on the boat. And you don't have the problem of the gaff twisting off like you do on the mainsail.
Okay, now there was a technical term. And the only reason I know the technical term is because there was a restaurant, Clark Chapin, who's a Fosey on here from Michigan. If my mother's watching, will know there was a restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan, owned and operated by a sailing friend of ours, member of our club, good racer, good sailor. And the name of the restaurant was Golly Wobbler.
The Golly Wobbler.
In landlocked Ann Arbor. So tell us what a Golly Wobbler is.
Well, you know how you have a spinnaker that flies off a sloop's mast. You have a spinnaker for the schooner off the foremast. We use an asymmetrical that tacks on the bowsprit and flies from the top of the foremast. But that leaves the mainmast out there with nothing flying from it. And so there's a version of a fisherman's staysail which tacks to the deck at the base of the foremast. It has another attachment at the top of the foremast, and then it's hoisted to the peak of the mainmast, and you sheet it to the end of the main boom, so that the thing is enormous. That sail alone almost doubles our sail area going downwind.
The Golly Wobbler. Yeah. James Bland saying, "Ding, ding, ding!" The Golly Wobbler.
So we have a navigator, Lance Burke, and he will occasionally stick his head out of the hatch when we're going around the windward mark and yell, "Hoist the Golly Wobbler!" He just loves saying that.
Yeah.
Alex Kent, again, whom you know, is asking, any interesting Crosby artifacts found on board after the purchase?
No. In fact, we wanted to make it very clear to David that we didn't want any artifacts, especially of a certain type. And so we actually had the boat inspected. Some guys with a dog came down and ran through the boat and said, "Nope, nothing here."
Was that the feds? Did you bring the feds down with their dogs?
No. Yes. The local cops were perfectly happy to do it. But the thing is, for those who don't cruise internationally, if you arrive in some place like Mexico or Honduras or wherever, and they decide to inspect you and find something, you lose the boat. Mm-hmm. And so there's just no way we wanted to do that.
Okay, now we've got a corrector Crutonic for you. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Is it correct or Crutonic that Cross, talking about alliteration, penned wooden ships in Mayan's saloon or salon?
I happen to know the answer to this. You wanted to run this as one of your contests?
No, you tell us.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, according to Crosby, he did.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there, but he sat down we have a part of the saloon that has a bench seat across the back of the saloon, and he said, "I sat right here, and that's where I wrote it." Yeah. It's one of my favorite songs.
Likewise. Ken, speaking of wooden boats, Ken Saban, our boat building friend in Toledo, Ohio, superb guy. In all my years rebuilding and saving boats, I believe they live and breathe and say thank you when you're done. Mm. Yeah. Question from Stingray up in Seattle. I'm trying to remember what Malibu area canyon was, what it was called, where Crosby and others learned to harmonize so beautifully. Trivia question for Beau.
So there were two canyons. I grew up down there. So Laurel Canyon there's actually a documentary about the Beach Boys and Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Byrds, the Monkees, all those guys all rented what were really sort of beat up 1920s cottages that were in Laurel Canyon in those days. Those are almost all gone now. They've been replaced by big houses. But there's another canyon further up it's called Malibu Canyon, which is, or Topanga Canyon, depending on which end you're looking at. And that's where they migrated to over the years. But the music industry in that period of Laurel Canyon was amazing. The creativity. I'm startled, frankly, when I ask my kids who are now in their late 30s what their favorite music is. It's like the Eagles and the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'm completely surprised because that the durability of that music has been amazing.
Well, it's the same with my 30-year-old daughter, with Meg, whom you know, and I think the Beatles are probably still her favorite band. But it's like us. I mean, our favorite music is ever, it is everlasting. That's not the word I wanted, Julia.
Evergreen?
It's evergreen. That's a good point too. But I mean, things like, classical music from Bach and Beethoven and so on, but also jazz. Classic, jazz. It goes back into the whatever. Okay, we are doing another Tom's
Tangent.
Tangential. James Bland saying there's a lady basketball player that is familiar with that problem of inspections with the fence and dog. Good music. James Bland is saying never goes out of style. Good point. Is Deadhead music Californian too? Stingray is asking.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course.
The Grateful Dead, Marin County, basically.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
here. He
North of San Francisco.
Stingray knows that. He's a guitar player up in Seattle. He's testing our knowledge. One last look. We showed this before, but this is after you owned the boat, sailing here in the Master Mariners. What's the Master
Yes.
Mariners?
Well, it's a society that was started originally in the late 1800s to provide funds to take care of decrepit old sailors who couldn't sail anymore. There was sailing was a rough profession in the old days, and there were a lot of
Some would say it still is.
It is, but they're riding around in great big steel ships now with air conditioning, so it's not quite the same.
I was talking more about sailors on our sport.
Oh,
I
yeah,
know some
yeah.
who are pretty rough.
Yes. So anyway, the Master Mariners Benevolent Society is its proper name. And this was how they raised money to take care of the old sailors. And they used to have a race of whatever boats they had. It was fishing boats. I mean, it was all sorts of things. The race has a wonderful, interesting rule in the notice of race in their sailing instructions. It describes that if one of the big schooners is close enough to hit the windward mark with a potato that you throw and hit the mark, that counts as having rounded the mark. So over the years, this has been in the tradition ever since the...
Say that again. You don't have to round the mark. You just have to sail close enough to it that you can hit it with a potato.
Right. And over the years, people have done things like recruit pitchers from the San Francisco Giants to come along on the boat, and so that they can hit the mark from further away.
You're not not kidding.
No.
You're serious.
No, check with our mutual friend Terry Klaus. It is a riot, and it's a great tradition, and it shows you that the people who race in this race don't take it as seriously as some other regattas we race in.
So we also looked at this photo a minute ago of the 2022 Big Boat Series, and I've got a question here that's come in from John Sangmeister, and he really wants to know what your because the club just switched from you switched from using IRC to ORCI, I guess.
Well, it's not quite. We went through ORR.
ORR.
So we went from IRC to ORR and then to ORCI.
Yeah.
And all that's alphabet soup for folks. John knows a lot about this.
Well, a lot of people on here will know about it too. So we do talk about it every now and then with some, especially some of our European friends. So what was the reason, if you don't mind going into that, just briefly, behind that?
Well, the clubs with the Rolex Big Boat Series, we are always looking to try and expand the pool of boats that can race. And over the years, at various times, we've had out-of-town boats arrive in large numbers, and we wanted to encourage that. I mean, there's been a desire to have European or East Coast boats turn up. We have had two or three in the last couple of years. But as we came out of COVID, we wanted to see if this would entice more boats to travel and participate in the Big Boat Series.
But so far, we don't know because it's too early in the...
The results have been about the same. Yeah. Interestingly enough, the Classics decided as a class that they wanted to stick with ORR, which is the handicap that Transpac has run under in Bermuda race, and which is fine. I think the differences, I'm technical enough to understand a bit about the math, although I'm no naval architect and I don't write rules, but I understand when they explain them. And the technical differences between the rules are relatively small. The goals of the rules are slightly different. ORC as a group, it tends to be much more interested in the development of new boats and tends to encourage that, whereas ORR is far more interested in people racing the boat they already own. And that's one of the reasons that you find the United States has had a fair amount of ORR handicap, because they want to protect the fleet that's already sailing.
Yeah, John's asking, does ORC accurately measure stability? I don't think we need to get in that today. We're an hour into the show, but we will at some point. I promise, John, we will. I talked to Bruce Nelson. I phoned Bruce this morning, and he's got some views on ORC versus IRC. And of course, all of our European foci who are on here, notably whom you met at Stag Cruise this year, I'm sure, the Secretary General of the IMA, Andrew McIrvin, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin is a good friend and has been on the show, been our COVID expert as well. We're going to get, I promise, John, we're going to get some people on to talk about, compare and contrast those two rules, because it is causing a fair bit of angst in some quarters. In other quarters, it's apparently just carrying on just fine. The classic, but go ahead.
There's one thing that I think really, if I was to leave your audience with one single point, it's something that I think is critically important, which is the use of win band selection after the race is over. I don't believe it's good racing, and I think it's hated broadly by the racers to not know what your rating is before the start of the race. I just think it takes away, well, let's put it this way, you don't know who to cover. So
I totally agree. And we go through, I sail this 50-footer down at Balboa Yacht Club, but it's okay with the gang. And frankly, we'd rather sail PHRF and know, we know what we know. We know what boats are going to be fast in what conditions. And that, by the way, brings me to Big Boat Series. Not that we need to dwell on this either. And Pedro Foiling Sailor's asking us to explain ORR and ORC, but we'll do that. Peter, just Google it. Go on and look at yacht rating rules, and you'll see every rule from the CCA and the IOR and what they all mean. But back to this, I think the classic, it's been brilliant what you and the late, great Dewey Hines and a few others have done to bring this classic series into the Big Boat Series, because it gets some big boats back in the Big Boat Series instead of a one design competition, the J-Fest that it's become. Not that that's bad, that's great. But I think the other problem is, frankly, is that the SoCal boats, which used to come up here for Big Boat Series, everything is now so horses for courses. The SoCal boats are all tuned up for light air because it's, generally speaking, lighter air down there, and they can make some adjustments for breezier stuff. But to come up here, for us to bring, for example, It's Okay, they used to come up here when they had an OD 48 or something before the current Andrews 50. But to come up here with what is basically a light air boat and hammer around in the bay in 20 to 30 is really tough. So the SoCal boats tend not to come up here. And the East Coast boats only come if they spend the season here, basically. They send a boat out here and say, okay, we'll campaign on not just here in the Bay, but on the East Coast or on the West Coast. And likewise, the San Francisco Bay boats don't go down because they're tuned up for the most part. Like one design classes, the J105s can move where they want, which is one of the beauties of that. Okay, anything else on rating rules? We said we wouldn't go into it, but we have.
There we have.
we have gone into it. Okay.
I think, Tom, that the key message and the reason that IRC is popular and PHRF are popular, just as you said, is what your handicap is before the start, and nobody changes it. And we can do that with both ORC and ORR by simply selecting the wind speed based on the NOAA forecast rather than the observed winds that the guy with the anemometer finds on the race committee boat. Yeah. And then everybody will know what their handicap is before the start and know who to cover. It's that simple.
Exactly. And then there's always, even if it's not true or it's almost never an issue, there's always the concern in the back of your mind that somebody on the race committee is doing something to help somebody else, or is incompetently measuring, it was breezier than that, or it was not as breezy as they've made it out to be. The average wind wasn't right, yada, yada. So, yeah, people are talking about thistles. Alex Kent saying, agreed. Adding classics was fun and interesting. Richard Lee, Ken Saban, hi, can you please send me? Okay, so the Richard Lee, there was somebody who was saying, a David Court, was saying hi to you, Commodore? Quite a bit earlier. It must be a friend of yours. I don't recognize David I think it's David, as a regular on here, but welcome to everybody. If you're just joining us, it's our regular Tuesday and Friday Sailing Illustrated webcast at 1300 Pacific. We're an hour and 5 minutes into the show. Our guest is the newly installed Commodore of St. Francis Yacht Club, and by now quite a good friend, Beau Vrolyk. We won't tell Julia what we did in the bar at St. Francis last night, but yes, we we nearly closed it with the chairman of the board, which is something else we want to get into talking about after we just one last photo, one last image of the beautiful Mayan. And I've been below, but I've never gone sailing. I'd love to go for a sail sometime.
Anytime, Tom.
I appreciate that.
He's the wrong person to say that to. He'll show up, you know.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. We Merlin, a couple of years ago, Merlin broke its rudder steering gear, and they were stranded at the dock. So Mayan just packed about 5 or 6 of them onto the crew, and we all took them all sailing.
You know, that is also a great tradition down in at Balboa Yacht Club, which I really call as my home club. If I put the credits up here, Beau, I list, not because I'm not proud of being a member of St. Francis or Fort Worth or any number of other clubs, but I list Balboa Yacht Club just to show a little less regionality, if that's a word. Julia lists St. Francis. But one of the great things that is done down there on the beer cans, the Thursday night in the harbor, Newport Harbor races, is they just pile people on the boat. And I mean, you're out there to have fun. You're out there. This is what Dave Perry, when we talked to the FOSI Focus, did we cover it? Have we been to that yet? FOSI Foci? I'm not sure we have. But Dave Perry was talking last night to the Atlantic award ceremony. And he said, I can come here and talk about racing rules and all this other stuff that but let's talk about how we have fun in the sport. One of them is to pile people on the boat. You almost ought to give a handicap for people. The more people on the boat, the merrier, within reason and safety and everything else, because
for Friday night.
Yeah, and Alex Kent has invited me to go sailing across the bay in something J105s, I think, and I will, but it's too cold up here, Beau. I like to sail down in SoCal where it's warm.
Excuse me.
Shorts, t-shirts, and flip flops. Up here, you got to get dressed for the North Pole.
No, you missed what I was saying there, Tom.
You're a SoCal boy. You should be.
Yeah, there's a cough. But we have a simple rule, and we've done it multiple times. We don't leave anybody on the dock. If there's somebody who looks like, they want to go sailing, they go.
Yeah, brilliant. Beautiful rule.
Nice.
Okay, now let's turn the page here to what happened down in your adopted hometown where you and Fastest Fun Bill Lee and any number of other fine sailors live. What happened down there a couple of weeks ago? We got a little water here in our garage,
Right.
which I've since cleaned up. I didn't send you pictures either. I've really cleaned it up. It's cleaner it's been in here. What happened down there, Beau, in Santa Cruz?
Well, as you know, we had a very, very large series of storms, but one of them in particular, the center barometric pressure got down to 956, I think I saw. Anyway, there were literally hurricane force winds coming out of that storm, and it came towards us relatively slowly. So it had a long time to build up some significant waves. So there are places, Santa Cruz, for example, measured the largest wave it has ever measured at the NOAA facility there, which was 19.5 feet. Those arrived at the top of what people call king tides, which is, instead of having a normal high tide of 5 feet or so, we had a high tide of 9 feet. So the combination of an extremely high tide and the surge from these winds and the waves, it obliterated parts of Capitola. That's the Capitola Wharf right there. It just tore it to shreds. That's Zelda's restaurant. That's what's left of the wharf after it got used as a battering ram to go through the windows of the restaurant. A good friend, Chuck Hawley, his family had a cabin on the beach, a cottage. It just picked it up and tossed it further inshore and destroyed it. The waves were immense.
Yeah, a lot of people know Chuck. We mentioned when we showed a couple of these pictures when this happened 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So things are back in pretty good shape. But how about your harbor? This is the entrance to Santa Cruz Harbor, and is Mayan still in there?
Yeah, she's way up in the up at that bridge up there at the top of the harbor. Yeah, up there. She's on that last row of slips.
It's 4-foot draft.
Yeah, 4.5 feet. Well, we won't try to go out over this sandbar. You can see next to the jetty on the right that there's a little bit of water there. Right down, just inside the harbor. That's about 4.5, 5 feet deep. And that's getting dredged. You can see our dredge is back there anchored. Yep, that's it. And then what'll happen is they are right now beavering away at that sandbar, trying to get rid of it. Now, this harbor has been filled with sand many times. That's why we own our own dredge down there, and we have to dredge that out. We take the sand out of the harbor and throw it on that beach in the right picture to the right, and it's just
Oh, so you
natural.
dredged it. Well, this is probably from that beach, isn't it?
Oh no, this came down from your left side.
Comes from in here,
Yeah, the
and
sand.
then you move it over here.
Yep, we just dump it on the other side of the jetty. All of the harbors, Santa Barbara, Morro Bay, Santa Cruz, they all have this problem. The California current is moving sand down the coast from north to south, and it bumps into a jetty and swirls around it and drops the sand behind the jetty. And that's exactly what happened. This is not the worst it's been. I mean, I've seen it where you could literally walk all the way across without getting wet. But the guys will get it open. We expect to be able to leave the harbor to actually come up to San Francisco in the middle of February, when the dredge will have cut a bit deeper channel, and we can get out when the wind's really calm in the morning.
Questions, Julia? Anything?
No, I'm just remembering and looking at that harbor.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back to St. Francis Yacht Club, because you have an interesting system there. And I used to be critical of it. I'm actually coming to like it, I think. But unlike most clubs, you have not only a Commodore, but you also have a chairman of the board who is different from the Commodore. This is a good friend. In fact, Julia, we were at the bar with Greg last night. This is Greg Wetterston, who is chairman of the board at St. Francis Yacht Club. And how is this governance different from most other clubs that we are aware of, where the Commodore is also the chairman of the board?
Yeah, I have no idea what the history is of how this happened, but ever since the founding of the club, there has been a Commodore who is really in charge of the membership and the member facing. And Paul Kayard used to refer to it as the guardian of the fleet. And that the Commodore's job is to make sure that the club is doing what the members want it to be doing. The operational side, meaning budgets, financial maneuvers, keeping the doors open and all the rest, is the responsibility of the chairman of the board as the official CEO of the organization. And the general manager of the club reports to him, along with the finance chair and all that.
So is that a better system than say New York Yacht Club, which, I mean, New York's got a big, we say, well, St. Francis is a big operation. It's year round. So is San Diego, so is Newport Harbor, so is Balboa, and many other clubs. And New York's got, multiple stations. They got the big downtown on 44th Street clubhouse. And they got the Harbor Court out in Newport. We've got Tinsley and the clubhouse. But Julia, do you know how this came about, that we have a chairman of the board? I never ask a question I don't know the answer to well. She is very strongly in favor of this system, Bo.
Yeah, it's because there have been
Croutonic Commodores.
Commodores who didn't know or understand money at all, and made life very difficult for the club financially. And so, and the vice versa, if you have somebody who is a Commodore who can only see dollar signs, it's not so much fun.
See, I just went to a close-up of you on the new camera. You hear that?
Uh-huh.
Huh?
Oh, yes. Well, that's good.
And we can do a few other things.
No, that's not. Yes.
We can see what time it is. Oh, that's the America's Cup.
Uh-huh.
Bo, is that is it true that some Commodores are just not? I think what it allows you to do, it allows you to select a Commodore who isn't necessarily like you. You're a business person. I'm sure you'd have no problem running the business side of the club as well as the member-facing side of the club, right, Julie? You wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But Tom, I think there's another factor here, and I think this goes. I'm making this up just by looking at the actual history that I do know of the way St. Francis split off of San Francisco Yacht Club and the kind of people who were there at the time. I mean, I made a crack about Crocker taking off to go sailing, but the people who founded the club were were major business leaders in San Francisco. And I believe they just didn't want to concentrate 100% of the power in one person's hands. So they divided it into two so that they would be a very distinct power sharing arrangement.
Sounds like post-war Germany.
Yeah, yeah. But Greg and I are close friends, and it's a little easier to get along. There's no Berlin Wall, but that it does require that the chairman be able to, or chairwoman. I'm proud to say I had some little bit to do with having our first female chairman, and she chose to use the word chairman, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, you do need to get along with, if you're Commodore, you want a chairman that you can get along with. And Greg and I get along really, really well, as was exhibited with the three of us at the bar last night.
Well, that's a special bond that we have. That's another. Plus, he was in the show along with you. He was the runner-up act.
Yes, he was.
And he was hilarious. Now, who selects you're elected by the membership. There's a nominating committee.
Right.
And normally there's no opposition. There has been a couple times, Julia, 3 or 4 times in the past, there's been opposition candidates, what, 3 or 4 times?
Yep.
And you had no opposition because you're so bloody popular. Who selects the chairman? And your term is 1 year. You go through each of the flags up for a year. How long is the chairman? His term normally.
So previous to being a flag officer, I was a board member, and so we elect board members for 3 years. And we have occasionally had a chairman, I think maybe twice, who was actually chairman for all 3 years. Typically, the first year that someone is on the board, if they look like they're going to be a chairman type of person, they'll run the finance committee or run some other part of the board. But then the tradition at our club is the Commodore nominates people to positions such as chief counsel, treasurer, and chairman of the board. And then the board either votes or we get other nominations and they elect somebody else. But the chairman is selected by the board of directors.
Somebody asked, I think Stingray, somebody asked what the big job that Paul Cahart had in the club. Yeah. He was what he called himself, Minister of the Loot. He was chairman of the board for a couple of years, right? Did a good job.
Yeah. He started out as finance. In fact, that annual meeting where he referred to himself as the keeper of the loot was when he was the chair of the finance committee.
Okay.
And then he became the chairman for 2 years.
Does the chairman often become rear commodore? If he or she does a good job, or is that normally not a path?
It's not a normal path. It has happened, but rarely. And part of the reason I believe is, like, if you ask Paul if he wanted to be Commodore, he would just look at you like, you got to be kidding. So I think various ones of us have different personality types that lend us to one of those two paths. I'm kind of a double header. I could do both jobs. I really enjoy the Commodore job. And I'm an extrovert, so it's a natural fit.
Yeah.
Julia, you're very fond of both these guys, of Wedderston and of Commodore Vrolyk, and I think the club is being very well led. It's a tough time post-COVID and money and inflation and everything else, right?
Yes, it's been tough.
You have a chairman of the board here at the Beach Street Yacht Club.
You bet.
And a Commodore.
Yes, meet the chairman of the board.
Well, you know who the chairman is here.
I guess so.
But the Commodore makes we don't have committees here. We have commissions. In fact, we have commissioners. They're committees of one.
Yeah.
And for instance, Mario Schumann is our disciplinary commissioner. Can you think of anybody more appropriate than that? Except maybe Dick Anderson would be good, but he's not a member. So no,
I'm no comment.
Yeah, we have to have commissioners, and Julia makes appointments, and then she and only Julia makes final decisions. And we're a hell of a lot more efficient here than St. Francis.
And the annual meeting is always held with a strict agenda and is a minute and a half long.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Commodore Pfaff is our chairman, our nominating commissioner, and that's it. His report is it at the AGM. Okay, let's go on. Speaking of AGMs, this is a shot from the other night when you became Commodore at the St. Francis Yacht Club AGM with two famously cool and famously good sailors. Tell us about your long time familial relationship with Stan and Sally?
Oh, well, Stan and I met when he was about 12, and we sailed together in dinghies, raced against each other in lasers as we got bigger. And he went off to Yale to join this Yale sailing team, where he became the head of the captain of the team, or Commodore. I've forgotten what the exact title is. And he met Sally while he was there. She was then working for a close friend of both Stan and mine, Steve Taylor, at the North Sails Loft, and she's a wicked fast sailmaker. She's just really good. And you might remember she owned a company called the Spinnaker Shop and built some incredibly fast spinnakers for boats. Anyway, so Stan and I started sailing together long ago. We ended up, we had a good story. Our first long trip was Stan managed to convince his father to loan us his family's Kettenberg 50 that take it to the Caribbean and back, provided we returned it in the same condition in which we had found it. We left LA with it. We damn near sunk the boat. and so we were out in the Caribbean sailing east in very heavy seas. And as you know, Kettenberg 50s have got great big windows on the side of the saloon. We had been defending those windows by tying the 180 and 150 Genoa up against the lifelines to protect the windows from waves. And we had recently jibed the boat, and we had not moved the sailbags, and we got hit by a very big wave, which blew in all four windows on the starboard side. And we were waist deep in water. And so we threw the water out the window, where the window used to be, with a trash can, and sailed back to Panama and put the boat back together. So that, and the rest of the trip was comparatively uneventful. But we had a great time. It took about a year, and it was a terrific thing for young people to do together. I think Stan was 19 when we left, and he was the captain. I was the old geezer. I was 22. So the reason that Stan's dad was Dave Honey. Dave and Dick Honey. Dick Honey was a longtime Palo Alto Yacht Club member and a great sailor. But Dick and Dave had brought the schooner Kelpie to California for an owner. They did a delivery right after World War II. And I think that Dave Honey thought it would be good for his son. And I had known the family for years by that point. And so he basically told us, okay, have a good time, which is one hell of a gift. Anyway, Stan after that, a few years after that trip, I married Stan's sister, Tammy, and we were married for 26 years and produced two great kids. And our son went off to Yale and became the captain of the Yale sailing team. And
I didn't know.
John Vrolyk, my son, who's also a St. Francis member, his middle name is Stan for obvious reasons, for his uncle Stan.
Now, did your son John just obtain a Cal 40?
He certainly did.
Tell us about
Stan and
that.
Sally. Yeah, after winning the Bermuda race, and winning it overall, by the way, not just
class,
the Bermuda race makes it very hard to figure out who actually won overall. But Stan is a math wizard, and so he corrected out all the boats against each other, and Illusion literally won the entire race, and is my understanding. And they sailed her home, and John bought the boat, and he and his newly married wife are busy working on her, and they take her sailing, and it's great to have it in the family.
And the Honeys have got a stink pot now.
Yes, they bought the boat Mary Menninger owned. She was Mary Griffith. Her father, George Griffith, had that boat built. It's a very unique powerboat, which they have in the San Francisco Bay now. It's down in the Redwood City West Point Marina. And it is a fascinating boat. It is exactly the kind of boat you'd expect the inventor of a boat like the Cal 40 to build. It's an ultralight powerboat, and it's wicked fast and very lightweight and very cheap to run compared to most powerboats.
Some people call Stan, and indeed Sally, I would, the smartest man in yachting. This from an article not too many months ago in Yachting World. What's your reaction to that?
I would never argue with it. I don't know all of the people in yachting, but certainly I've spent my life working with very capable technical people in the computer industry and in the financial services business, and I have never known anybody close to as smart as Stan. Um, the things that guy has accomplished are astounding. I mean, he has 3 Emmys, if I got it right. You know, he invented the first down line and a couple of other things that we just take for granted now in television. What most people don't know is he also, before all that, invented the first car navigator with a screen so you could tell where you were. And a company called ETAC, where he worked with Chuck Hawley, by the way. So, you know, the guy has just incredibly broad skills. And most recently, he got bored with the way battery systems worked, and he knew that he had a fire on board the Volvo Ocean Race boat where a piece of metal shorted the NiCad batteries to the carbon fiber hull, and the whole boat was filled with smoke and in danger, frankly, of going down. And after that, Stan wanted to find a way to use a battery technology that was less dangerous. So he built his own lithium iron phosphate battery control system and then explained exactly how to do it. So he basically open sourced an incredibly capable engineering job of how you control lithium iron phosphate, which is perfect for sailboats and it's not good for cars because the batteries are heavy.
Is it going to market?
Oh yeah, that's the ones you buy now from Victron and others. They look very oddly a lot like Stan's work of 10 years ago when he did this project. He did it in his garage, and Illusion has, I think, the prototype of that system, the California Illusion.
You see Peter Stevenson, Pedro Foiling Sailors comment, Julia? Breaking news, Jody's solar-powered beer fridge on Bubbles is not working. Broken positive leadoff. Our foes here are fantastic. Let's go back this photo from last Tuesday night, a week ago Tuesday, at the AGM, the annual general meeting at St. Francis. What was going on here at the podium when Stan and Sally were there?
The club awarded them the couple of the two of them the Yachtsman of the Year award, and incredibly well deserved. You know, Sally is one of our few members who I think she's one of our few members who has two Rolex.
Yachtswoman
of the Year.
Yeah.
And Stan has it once. There's no end of banter about that fact.
No.
That Sally has more than he does, but. You know, they're such a wonderful couple. I'm obviously highly biased, but it was well deserved, and you know, what a way to exit being a boat owner to win the Bermuda race in decisive manner. And then, of course, typical of Stan, he said, "Oh no, it wasn't that big a deal. It was just that, you know, the Cal 40s. It happened to be a really good year for Cal 40s," which is understated.
Yeah, partially true, but really a humble understatement from. You know, I told you this maybe last night, maybe in the tech check, but I've known Sally much longer than I've known Stan. When we were campaigning Fireballs, and she was driving for her ex-husband. Did he die? Did Mark Lindsay die? I think he passed away,
Mark.
didn't he? Terrific guy that he was, and they were building the best foils, the best rudders, and center boards for that class and many others. And she was on the wheel. She was on the helm in the Fireball, and they were extremely difficult to beat. We were both more or less top of the class, and they were really, really good. Stingray's asking the question, what was the name of the AC race display system Larry E. had Stan develop? It was a breakthrough, and I think he is talking about...
Yeah, that was the America's Cup stuff, and it was fascinating.
Liveline.
Liveline. He took the technology he developed for football and painting the yellow and blue lines on the football grass, and he applied that to sailboat racing with the skill of one of the world's best navigators and a way to explain what was going on to normal television viewers. I mean, the fact that the boundary lines appear, that you can see how fast each boat is going, all of that stuff is Stan's technology and Stan's team.
But it was simply the idea of laying yard markers, as we call them in, I guess,
Right.
American football gridiron.
Yep.
The idea
Right.
of putting yard markers on the field so you could see the
Yep.
boat's relative position. That was very difficult to do with helicopters and alignment and everything with the course and the marks and so on. But Stan figured that all out. And the idea to do that has revolutionized, I
Absolutely.
think. Don't you agree, Julia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's another thing. It just is just happening now, which is Stan and Benj and some other people founded the Sailing Yacht Research Foundation.
Benj being?
Benjamin.
Steve Benjamin.
And
another Yaley.
Yep.
Another famously good sailor.
Contagious. Anyway, what the organization has done is developed with financial aid from the Ilka Fleet and from St. Francis and from New York Yacht Club. And there's one other I'm missing, which I shouldn't. Anyway, they helped fund the development of something that is the primitive first beginnings of doing the kind of technology that the America's Cup does, but doing it all with cell phones strapped to the mast of the boat. And the first iteration of that will tell the competitors when they're over early, and it will tell the race committee who's over early. And so the instant that the gun goes off, the PRO gets a list of sail numbers and that we're over early and the rest are clear. And so as you can imagine, for a black flag or an I flag start where you've got to get some people around the ends or you got to throw some people out, it's a huge benefit. What's really a benefit to the sailor is the screen of the phone turns bright red as soon as you got the bow over the starting line. Mm-hmm. And because the sailors and the race committee are using the exact same technology, there's no more arguing about whether somebody was over or not. You're just over. You're done. So deal with it. And of course, some of the folks who are astute about cell phone technology will argue that the GPS and the phones are only accurate to maybe a foot or two. Well, the newer GPSs are more accurate, but also it doesn't really matter if all of the competitors are using the same tool, then whether it's accurate to 2 inches or not just doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Because the race committee is never accurate to 2 inches. Anyway, they can't see, as Pedro Foiling Sailor just said, now I can't hide in the middle of the fleet and get over early on the starting
That's
line,
right.
which is what everybody does. Commodore, one last question, and then we'll let you go, or you stay, please, if you've got the time. What are your goals this year? I know you're very goal-oriented. What do you want to accomplish this year?
Well, first thing to say is when you have a yacht club with 2,273 members, you can't change things very quickly. So your goals have to be something that is quantifiable and is accomplishable in a year. And everything I'm working on right now is focused on one simple metric, which has been with me ever since I ran companies, which is customer satisfaction. In the case of a yacht club, the members are the customer. And so we're forming up teams of people in every committee to focus on making the customer happy and making them genuinely ecstatic with the performance of the club. And it's an easy message for people to get behind. Nobody ever argues with you about it. It's an incredibly difficult thing to actually execute on day after day, year in, year out. But we've got a good team together, a lot of very talented people. And the membership just astounds me. Early in your show, Tom, you had talked about how COVID was a tough for everybody, and it was undoubtedly. But through that, our membership hung in there, exhibiting a tremendous loyalty to the club, which is astounding. A very small number of people had to leave the club primarily for financial reasons, but almost all the members stayed. And of course, now they're coming back with a vengeance. The club is packed and having a blast, and it's great to see that. And I'm lucky enough to be the guy who got to be Commodore as we came out of all that mess, and now everything's looking much rosier.
Julia's nodding her head as a Commodore herself. She's nodding her head yes.
Yes.
Customer satisfaction.
And I was actually thinking about Kenny Glidewell, who arrived with all enthusiasm and
COVID struck.
and COVID and everything's shut down. He didn't ever get to do any of the fun things that Commodores get to do.
Yeah.
And I've always felt sorry for him.
Yeah, no, Ken's a dear friend of mine, and I actually asked him. I said, "Hey, you want me to nominate you? You could go do it again." And he said, "No,
No,
go away."
Well, and people don't realize the job that he has done with the Rolex sponsorship, the Rolex Big Boat Series. He's really our liaison with Rolex in many respects, and keeps that humming along. Which Rolex is not. We take them for granted, and we don't. Not St. Francis, but a lot of people in the sport do, because they are a fabulous sponsor.
Yes.
They are a wonderful sponsor. It's just amazing. One of my favorite memories from Rolex Big Boat Series is the last day of racing. We always offer to take all the Rolex people out on Mayan as crew and give them pennies so they match. They look like they're part of the crew. We had two young ladies who were in their early 20s, I would guess, that went out with us and just got soaking wet and had a ball. They had an absolute ball, and they staggered up to the bar with all the other sailors at the end of the day and just got right into it. And it was just wonderful.
And that's what the sport's all about. We keep saying the yacht racing is fun, but it's the conviviality, if that's a word. It's the camaraderie afterwards in the bar or wherever. I like, Beau, with our 50-footer, we have a tradition of after the race not leaving the cockpit. We put the boat away. We're tied up. We stay there. We have a glass of something, and not really to compare notes, just to laugh, whether we did well or not so well, and just to laugh and have fun. And don't leave the cockpit. Anybody that leaves the cockpit is a crouton.
And
at least right away. No, seriously. If we're at the Hot Rum down in San Diego, everybody else is dashing up to the bar at SDYC. We'll hang out in the cockpit for a little bit, and then other people come along. People, Tom Lewick or other old friend or new friends, young friends. Meg will bring her friend. It's just that's what it's about, right, Julia?
Right. Yeah.
You as an old crew, not an old, but as a senior.
Oh yes.
As a senior cruiser.
Yeah.
Beau, there's a couple other comments. Beau has an infectious personality. Another truly amazing guest. Thank you.
Wow.
Talking about strapping a policy, Fritz Mueller is down in Miami. I think he's in Miami. Is a great policy. Many clubs get top heavy and skip member satisfaction. Commodore?
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Can you stay, or do you have to blast?
I'll stay for a little bit. I got to check and see what else is going on, but I'll hang out.
Be sure that the yacht club is still in one piece over here behind 3 blocks behind us. Thank you, Commodore.
Yes,
thank you very much. Much appreciated. Stay with us if you can, and if we see you go off, we'll know that you've had to rush off to put out a fire someplace else. Commodore Beau Vrolyk, I'm going to put his title up one more time in case he's here in San Francisco at his apartment, but is the newly installed Commodore of the esteemed St. Francis Yacht Club, and by now a dear friend. We really appreciate your coming on, Beau. Thank you very much indeed.
Of course. Happy to do it.
Let's get to the America's Cup, and we've got a little bit of AC news. First of all, the Team New Zealand have installed, speaking of installations, they have invited into their team some new tough non-sailing, or at least they were when they were starting out. I'm sure they'll rapidly become sailors, yachts, men. Watch this video.
Got a really interesting week of cycle or testing. The two main physical qualities we're looking for are athletes that can sustain a really high power output for the length of a race, up to about half an hour, and athletes that can also achieve really high peaks in power that'll be used during races for the manoeuvres.
Well, I know I've got nothing left to give, so it's a bonus, but you sort of easily forget how much pain the little test can put you through, so that's a good little check-in and reminder.
It gives us an idea of their physical strengths, whether it be the short sprints, race or the long endurance aerobic work, and then in the end we compare that to what we'll need on the boat and end up with a group of cyclists that will carry us through the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's brutal. America's Cup's hard, so they put us through a hard test. Yeah, crucial to deliver the whole way through.
Yeah, no matter which way you go, it's a tough 30 seconds.
This is more physical than mental. First half you're gonna feel a thing. Second half you just start slowing down, and then the pain comes 5 minutes after you finish.
Cycling, a new part of the sport.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm still not adjusted to that.
Commodore, if you want to, I'm going to leave your mic open, so if you want to comment, just jump in. I take it you don't want to comment. Is that good for the sport?
Look, it's no different than turning handles on a coffee grinder. We need power, and at least they're still humans doing it instead of a motor. So I prefer the guys on bikes to running a diesel engine the whole time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Good point. We have another video from Team New Zealand. This about an announcement that we actually broke the news in a subtle way here the other day. And Rob Fry down in Auckland pinged me after the show, and he said, "You're right. You probably didn't know this, but they are about to go two boating with two 40-footers. And here is the announcement.
It's fantastic having two race boats in the water. I don't think Emirates Team New Zealand's had two race boats sailing together on the water since around 2007. It's not quite there yet. The breeze is up in Auckland today, so we'll keep one of them ashore and just go through the procedures and making sure we've got everything dialed in for when we do get a good weather window.
It's a bit of a dry run, doubling up everything and check all the systems are up and running and doing what they're supposed to do. Talking to two boats and still achieve everything that we're aiming to do is pretty important. So we've got it all ready for when we do go out with two boats and get into some match racing.
Okay, so what, Julia, do you think of that?
I think
two boating, the first team to two boat.
I think that's a good idea.
This was going to cut the cost of the America's Cup, right, Commodore?
Well, yeah, but you'll recall we had an America's Cup boat at the St. Francis once, and both Kayard and Blackaller told me that if we had gotten that boat in the water maybe 2 months earlier, we would have really, really had a shot, because it was a bear to figure out how to sail it. What New Zealand's doing here is perfect. They are just getting time on the water as quickly as possible, and there's nothing like it.
Exactly. So that is the 1987 campaign to which you're referring, because I was not with your team in '87, but I was with the club in 2000 with KR's 2000 campaign. But you're talking about '87, and that was the bow rudder boat,
right?
On
right.
USA 61. I think it was US 61.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, something like that. I don't remember the sail number, but yeah, I talked to a number of people who sailed on that boat and at length. And there's the obvious benefit of being able to have both rudders at different angles to turn more quickly and maneuvers, and then have them both pulling you to windward when you're going upwind. But even Tom Blackaller had trouble figuring out how to sail that boat. He's one of the best natural sailors ever. So another month on the water would have made a huge difference.
Indeed. Julia?
Absolutely. No, we were all sort of pining at that point.
Okay, we shall move on now to the Sail GP. We have a quick note here. Remember, we told you on the show, was it Tuesday or was it last Friday? But regardless, after the racing in Singapore, as they were going back to what they call the technical area, where the boats are dealt with on shore, the Kiwi boat was struck by lightning. And apparently it was a pretty good blast, because you saw the video that we played, and the rig, the carbon fiber, the electronics were blown. We knew that, but there was a lot of physical damage to the rig and beyond. And now SailGP today has announced that New Zealand's F-50 was damaged so badly by that lightning strike in Singapore, it will not be able to be repaired in time for the next GP in Sydney, which is the middle of February. The Kiwis will race the boat from the Canadians. So the Canadians are losing their boat. There must be a deal with new teams coming in. So the Kiwis get the Canadian boat. The Canadians will get boat 10, which is being built, just about done. And I can't remember. Some of you in the comments will remember who was getting that 10th boat. I don't remember what team that was. We're going to get that. But there's the news from Sail GP. The AC-40s are only about 2 mil a pop, Steve Gruber is saying. I don't know about the autopilots. We're going to get somebody on here to talk about autopilots and what's going on with all that. Luca Craig down in Auckland saying Hamish Bond is a legend here and in world rowing with a bit of cycling thrown in. It was one of the guys in that video you just saw. There are no spare boats or rigs. Ed, there must have been damage beyond just the boat, just the rig, because, I'm sure they could have slapped another rig in, but I think there were problems with the hydraulics. I mean, there's a lot of metal in those boats, not just the electronics. Okay, so that's from Tip and Shaft. Thank you, Beau. I told you about that. It's a terrific newsletter, free. I always say so here on the show for all of our FOSI, because it is out of France. It comes every Friday. You get it upstairs, right,
Yes.
Julia?
Mhm.
It's an email newsletter, and it is free, and it's terrific. It comes in English and in French. And you can subscribe to it on tipandshaft.com. Not sure. We should check in with the ocean race. The IMOCA fleet, as you know, are the only fleet sailing leg 2 from Cabo Verde down to see Ted Ryman in Cape Town. And they're on that leg now. It's slow going. And here is their latest race report. From today, it's day 2 of leg 2, and the IMOCA fleet continue to battle.
To do a big downwind.
Oh, they're going to have some audio of this. Sebastian Simon, Geo-Environment. Biotherm maintained a narrow advantage through the night, leading the chasing pack through multiple jibes.
Look at that.
The 11th Hour Racing team are the closest boat to Biotherm, so they're in second place again as they pick through challenging light winds. Paul Muehlhat, skipper of Biotherm.
Jibe was good, I think.
Damien Seguin. The fleet are likely to head southwest towards the coast of Brazil, as usual, in search of a route through the doldrums. The days ahead will see some tricky decisions and jibing until the more favorable breeze south of the equator. And that is today's daily report from the Ocean Race.
They do such a good job with those.
Yeah, I wish they'd voice them, though. I'd get Mirko Groschner or get Andrea Tagliamaco, who
Right.
were both working for them, FOSI, friends of ours.
All right.
Get them to voice them so that I don't have to.
Well, maybe they're doing that because it's a totally international audience.
Julia,
What?
get my fingers in front of the camera. It's money. It's all about the money. I think we've lost Beau. I think he bailed on us and maybe has to go tend to something, but we appreciate very much having Beau as our guest today. He was
Yes.
on for a long time, an hour and a half, and what a terrific guest.
Absolutely. He was absolutely terrific.
Appreciate it
Mhm.
very much indeed. This is our FOSI. Usually it's a focus, Julie, but today you're a Stanfordite. We're going to call this the FOSI FOSI. Isn't that the plural for when you have more than one focus?
I guess.
FOSI? FOSI? FOSI, I think it is. Cool people of Sailing Illustrated. And last night, as I think I mentioned, Dave Perry was with Steve Adkins. Steve sent this picture along, the former Commodore of the Madison Beach Yacht Club, and the first guy we knew that had COVID right at the beginning of that whole horrible situation, and he had it. He almost died. Remember, he went to.
Yeah. It took us through the whole thing.
He did. We interviewed him in the hospital.
I know.
When he was just off the respirator finally, and Steve Atkins is battling. He's got a bit of long COVID apparently. Terrific guy, Atlantic sailor. He sails a few other classes, and a really cool guy. He had the Atlantic class awards last night. Dave Perry, as I think I mentioned in that segment with Commodore Vrolyk, talked about the things, not about rules and all the other things that the old hands were expecting, but he talked about what is fun for sailing and for sailors and how to build your fleet, how to build the clubs, and the guru that David is. Nice job. Thanks, Steve, for sending in that picture. I'm laying in bed this morning reading as I do for an hour, I read before I get up, and I come across this tweet. Do you remember Robbie King, who was in one of the 12 skippers in last year's Governor's Cup?
Right.
And on June 3rd last year, we had him on the road to the Governor's Cup. We featured each of those sailors. Andy Rose interviewed them here on the show. And this kid is super bright. Everybody said, John Emmett and others said, he'll be the brightest person you ever had on the show. In fact, he'll be brighter than everybody else combined. And I think it's probably true. He is so bright, I don't even know what he's talking about in this tweet that he put out this morning. I don't want that lower third on there. Robbie tweeted, to play devil's advocate, since factoring is, listen carefully, Clark Chapin and Stingray and J. Frederick Bland and the other eggheads, to play devil's advocate, since factoring is quantumly tractable, might it be possible to design a corresponding optimization program inheriting some structure which allows variational quantum algorithms to work?
Of course.
Huh? What do you think of that?
I think it's absolutely right.
And of course, he's studying to get his PhD in quantum computing.
Yeah.
Robbie King is. And by the way, we're about to start up the road to the Gov Cup again. And those were so successful and so popular. We're going to do another thing. We're going to do a road to the National Sailing Hall of Fame induction. And we're going to it's because these people that, they have that induction thing. It's the last you hear from them. And I think Andy Rose and I are going to interview the nominees, the inductees, before they're inducted. And we might even carry that ceremony live this year because it's going to be co-hosted, one hears, by Newport Harbor Yacht Club and Balboa Yacht Club. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that. Luke Craig asking, do you have an update on Tom Mossy sailed, M-O-S-S-Y, I think it is, Luca, coming on the show? I don't yet, but John Emmett is helping us make that happen. Heisenberg voodoo stuff. Of course, that's how Lingy scientists in Kiblen have solved anti-gravity waves, Stingray is saying.
Of course.
Robbie King. Robbie, I hope you're watching or watch this in replay because we're proud of you. And when I saw that come across my phone this morning laying in bed, I thought, man, this kid is bright. And we'll get him back on. I don't know if he may have aged out if he's too old for Gov Cup this year or not. Yet, got to get Mozzie on, Steve Gruber is saying. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. Now, this is a really interesting thing. You talk about it's really another FOSI focus, but my dear friend and our longtime FOSI, your good friend, Julia, is in Miami, or was, and he's back. I think he's going down to Key West with one of his kids, with Jack. And his son Peter is sailing in this regatta in the Finn Gold Cup, which is going on right now. It started today. Racing started today. I think it's probably over. It's almost 6 p.m. down there now. One
of the youngest.
And he's the under 23. He's one of the youngest kids in the event. But there's also a 17-year-old sailing, a 17-year-old, and there's also an 87-year-old.
Which is lovely.
Sailing in that event. And speaking of the 87-year-old, here he is in the middle. Now, can you identify all three of these titans of our sport, as somebody said when I posted that picture on my Facebook last night? Yes. On the left is, from New Orleans, the celebrated John Dane III, JD3 as we call him. And Gus Miller in the middle, Professor Gus Miller, grew up in Rhode Island, somehow ended up at the University of Michigan, which is where I met him in the early 70s. So bloody hell, 50 some odd years ago. I called Bruce Nelson this morning to see if he knew what Gus was, he was a professor of something. None of us could remember. And we all claimed to have taken a class from him, but we never did, except he taught us a lot about sailing.
Yes.
And about being a gentleman and about the sport. He was our kind of unofficial sailing team coach. And Gus Miller, at age 87, is sailing in his something like 30th Gold Cup, Fin Gold Cup. And on the right, of course, who used to build fins, also was a fin sailor, Peter Harkin, better known as Harcoon. And these three titans of the sport.
That's a great picture.
In Miami. It's a great picture, thanks to Robert Deves, who took that. Now, we have a special presentation. It's a little longer than we normally run, but John Sangmeister this morning wandered around purposefully. He did, I think he's taking after John Emmett. He wandered around the venue and he interviewed people, and we have a fabulous video that he and one of his and son, Jack put together, because Peter is actually sailing. And Peter, I'll tell you in a minute, did very well in the second race. But here's the video submitted this morning by John Sangmeister from Miami.
Good morning, Tom and Julia from Miami, Florida, Coconut Grove Sailing Club. We are here for the 2023 Fin Gold Cup, the World Championships of this forecast. Today is for breeze, 15 to 18. It's going to be a beautiful day on Biscayne Bay. Clouds are threatening. This is the most cloud cover we've seen all week. This committee is getting ready for an exciting day. The class ranges in age from 17 to 87. There will be a few crash boats out there to pull people out of the drink. Competitors are gathering in the boatyard. We have world champions, we have national champions, we have star Olympians, we have newbies, and some seniors. It's really quite a mix of remarkable sailing talent. Coconut Grove Sailing Club have been gracious hosts to the competitors and guests alike, and extended a warm welcome for this international gathering. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you.
And your name, sir?
Freddie Sembolino.
Freddie, how are you? Welcome to the Fin Gold Cup. What do you think? How many have you done?
How many have I done? Oh, probably about 30 of them.
Fantastic.
The first one was in Long Beach in '74.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
When
And
Henry won, and on the day of the banquet, Richard Nixon was supposed to give a talk, and on that very day he resigned, so we didn't have the president talk to the group.
what an auspicious moment. Who knew that the fin could affect national geopolitical politics?
That's a little grandiose, but yeah.
Well, good luck today.
Thank you. I would say Freddie was an Olympian and I was his coach.
Fantastic.
That was what, 1992.
What is the, I heard that the range in ages in this regatta is 17 to 87?
That's right.
Yeah,
and
he's the 87.
Oh,
Congratulations. Well, that is fantastic. You are my hero, truly.
Thank you.
All right, well, good luck today. Welcome to the, what is this, the 2023 Fin Gold Cup. Tell us what you're doing here.
So we're trying to expedite the boats out of the parking lot and onto the water to the races, and then back in without causing too many problems.
Well, thank you, because without dedicated volunteers, none of these events would happen.
That's right. So we'll be, if you see somebody yelling at somebody else, it's probably one of us.
Okay, cheers. Well, thanks so much. All right, how are you, my friend?
Nice breeze today.
Nice breeze today. It's like Long Beach, California, isn't
It's
it?
gonna be rock and roll today.
Rock and roll. That is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for all your support of getting Peter up and running. This is cool.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you guys have been in a training cohort for a while.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to, keep in shape myself.
Tell us about your boat.
This is a brand new.
God damn, it's sexy.
Yeah, it's.
They build boats out of carbon fiber these days.
Yeah, it's super fast. So I'm still getting used to it, but
Luca, look at that. Isn't that a nice ad for you? It's a beautiful boat. I love the deck. All right, well, good luck today. Tell us about your story.
That's David Branch.
David Branch, forgive me.
All right. Star sailor, fin sailor, and from Oregon. And I got back into class in about year 2000. And basically, they made me class president because I attended a meeting. I was dealing with the job. So,
well, congratulations! Thanks for volunteering for the class. It's really exciting to see so many international competitors and a broad range in ages, 17 to 87.
That's right. Yeah, and I first met Gus at the Weymouth Masters over in England, and showed him around for a while. So we go back a ways. So he really got me going in the class. So great guy.
Thank you for your support of the class, and good luck today.
All right, thanks.
Tell us what you're doing. Why are we here?
I'm actually doing boat work before heading out to the race course.
Cool. How many of these Gold Cups have you done?
This will be the 8th.
The 8th?
Yes.
Well, good luck today. High card.
All right, thank you.
All right, counterpoint. Let's get your weather forecast for today.
Well, what you asked is how many national championships, and I've won 44.
44?
That's correct, in 7 different classes.
Awesome. Good luck today.
That's my claim.
Peter Sangmeister, James Golden. Welcome to Miami Beach, Florida. Tell us what you're doing.
We're racing in the Finn Gold Cup starting today. 5-day regatta, and looks like some big breeze the first couple days. 1.3 mile courses, and we've just added another U-23 to the fleet as of this morning.
Congratulations. Look at that. He's got the Henry boat. Look at that.
Yeah, thanks to Peter, I was able to put this event together Wednesday night, and here I am. I'm excited to sail. First time in the boat, and we'll see what happens.
So, James, you're on the U.S. sailing team right now, sailing lasers?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, well, cool. I understand that you're going to hike harder than anyone else here.
That's what I'm used to. So, yeah.
All right, well, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Tuning the rig with the tensionometer. We don't have the sophisticated tools of the Beach Street Yacht Club Studio B, but here's an animation of today's forecast, and you can see the breeze building all afternoon. Should be exciting and should favor the Utes. 1978 Finn Gold Cup winner, runner-up 2 years later, our Olympian and silver medalist in 1984. Cruise to the Stars, Dennis Conner, Stars and Stripes, teammate, friend. Welcome to Miami.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. I mean, where else would you want to be?
Where else would you want to be? Here we are. You're back coaching Finns. Tell us about today and tell us about the regatta.
Well, today's the first day of 5 days, 2 races a day. The weather forecast looks great. So we'll have wind, it looks like. Maybe the last day it might be a little on the challenging side, a little bit too light. Working up to the Worlds, we had no wind at all. So that's positive news. It's great to see old friends here and new friends, and the Finn class is just one of the best classes in the world. The racing is fantastic, and we've gone back. You see Gus Miller here.
We interviewed Gus this morning.
Who was a mentor of mine, and then you see young guys like Peter that are getting into the class.
It's, and they have really embraced the new group and made a special effort to bring in new blood, and it's very cool to watch.
Oh, it's growing. Yeah, the class is growing, and when I got involved in the class, I don't know if you can tell, I'm not really the fin sailor size, but I intuitively knew if I could race the fin at an international, at a high level, I could race any boat. And that's the same thing today. When you go out there, starting, boat speed, tactics, this is not a boat where you can just put the bow down and reach off to the other side of the course if you've made the wrong choice of the beat, So you have to, put together a really good tactical game. And it's just great. And it's a boat that you can sail, obviously, forever.
And the boats surprisingly have a long lifespan, much longer than other dinghies that were Olympic classes where you need four new boats for one quad.
Well, Laser's a good example, Yeah, so these boats up until the recent, I think in 2016, they came out with a slightly different design on the hull. And so that's kind of interjected new boats into the program. But, you know, Ben Ainsley's boat, you know, goes back 3-4 Olympics, and, you know, that he won his gold medals with. Yeah, so you could buy an old boat and be very competitive. Yeah, it's and the other thing is the sail design. The other JB, the Australian John Bertrand, was in Pewaukee, and he designed that fin sail, and that design has not changed today. You know, they call it different things and they tweak a little things. It's the same sail design. So yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool to be here. I'm really excited. We're gonna have a great day today.
So you have a cohort that you're coaching this week?
A cohort. Peter Sangmeister.
And AJ and Phil Ramming and
yeah, Robert Kinney.
And Robert Kinney.
Yeah, which is great actually.
The SoCal Fin Mafia.
Yeah, and the class is growing in Southern California. And what's great is reconnecting with old friends. You know, Phil Ramming.
I heard Cam Lewis is coming down this weekend.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great to catch up with him. And then
John McCausland too.
Yeah, well, you know, I think a lot of the top sailors in different classes today, they've touched the fin one way or the other. And you know, not being an Olympic class now, like the Star, I think you're going to see a lot of growth. And yeah, it's just exciting.
Well, cool. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, John.
Race Chairman Andy Hoffman, tell us about today.
Well, today's the first day of the actual racing. We expect to do 2 races. We're going to go about 1.5 miles off of land. Set a course that's a little over 1.4 miles probably. Got good wind, so hopefully we're going to have the pumping in effect. And we're looking forward to 2 great races.
Well, thank you for your volunteerism, and thank you for putting on a great event.
Thank you.
Good luck. Here with Jack, we're going to launch Peter, and we're off to Key West this afternoon. But thanks so much. Love to you and Julia. And thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed.
Now, was that fantastic or what?
It was terrific.
John, thank you very much.
Indeed.
And I have a feeling that Peter, who is Jack rather, who's standing there over John's shoulder or behind John's shoulder, is the twin. You know, those 2 guys are twins. William's the young one, but it's his twin brother, Peter, who's racing in the fin. And I think Jack maybe had something to do. That video they shot this morning in clips. And they sent me the clips, and then I was going to run the clips individually.
Yeah.
And then it all came back, and with some other stuff, that whole Bertrand interview they shot. I mean, you talk about how many Fozy were in that.
Yes.
From Gus Miller to American John Bertrand to, you know, right through the thing. Bravo Zulu. John, don't ever do a bad job well, because you're going to have to now shoot one of these every show for us.
I know.
Right, Julia?
Yes. No, it was terrific.
His audio's not as good as Emmett's.
No,
but for a first-time effort.
No, it was terrific. It was very facile.
For a first-time effort, it was fantastic.
Right.
Thanks, John. Gordon Smith saying thanks. Yeah, great report. Sangmeister, Stingray saying great video. Ted Ryman. We just heard from Ted Ryman. Yeah, and those tweaks, John Emmett is saying those tweaks in the over the years in the fin sail have made quite a difference. Thanks again, John Sangmeister. Terrific piece.
Yes.
And obviously off the cuff and a nice editing job and so on. Now, here's some, I don't know how he ended up, but just as we were going to air, John sent this photo of his son, Peter, who was in the second race today, was second at the first mark. Now, he's sailing in his first Gold Cup, and he gets to the weather mark second. I don't know how he did after that. Maybe John will stick something in here. But bravo Zulu to young Peter, who's in the U23 crowd, under 23 crowd at that regatta, as you saw. Luca Devote's boats are in, you know, you saw that?
I did.
Another Fozy. And what a class. J. Frederick Bland will be very pleased indeed, Julia. He being a veteran fin sailor and OK dinghy sailor and so on. Bravo Zulu. Thanks, John. Thank you very much. And Peter and Jack. That gets us to the last leg. And again, that fabulous painting.
Yes.
The last leg to Gloucester, the Thomas Hoyne painting that we've been using. And your favorite person in the whole show, Julia?
Yes.
I don't know if we have any finger wags today or not. One never knows. Whiskey Tango, you should read this. We should have you do this segment. Okay, this is a clean one. This is from our New York Fosey, because Sotheby's, of course, the auction house in New York and in London and elsewhere. Peter Taylor, thank you. The next item up for bid is?
A dozen eggs.
A dozen eggs. I ordered yesterday, eggs. I have Amazon Fresh. I like their delivery service better than your Safeway service and a few of the others. So I ordered a dozen eggs, and I thought for a pretty good price, because it was only $6 or $7.
Yeah.
And the delivery, in addition to everything else, Julia, that was going on this morning.
Yeah.
I also had a grocery delivery because they couldn't do it last night as it came this morning.
That's another reason I'd stay with Safeway.
In the middle of show prep. Look at the auto focus. I got to fix that. It's trying to search for focus on that camera. Our new camera too. Which is a terrific camera. So I thought, oh, this is great. They're only $6 or $7 for a dozen eggs. In fact, I thought maybe it was even 18. You know how many came?
6.
Half a dozen.
Oh.
No wonder it was such a great price.
Yes.
Up for bid. Now, this came from a good friend, and he sent this to us. I got to buy a bag of these, so somebody's got to send us a bag. He said, "What do you call ridiculous old people?" Organic seasoned croutons.
Yes.
That's us, Julia.
Yes, indeed. And
That's us.
Thinking that it's probably time that the Kalamata olive croutons be replaced. They're 5 or 10 years old.
Well, they're maybe not quite that old, but these are from Darlene Hines, the late great Dewey Hines. Those are fine. They've never been opened. Oh, I just knocked off Peter. Those came from Pedro Farling Sailor.
Mm-hmm.
The Pimp My Salad croutons, gluten free. Come on, man, these are good. We could open those up and put them in our coffee.
Yes. No.
Okay, that's thank you, Peter McDonald, who's another Finn sailor down in Newport Beach, and a great sailor in many different classes. Now, Julia, get your finger ready.
Okay.
I couldn't help myself. People, I got so many questions, including from my mother, about what was my reference to Prince Harry and his mother's Elizabeth Arden. So I found an article from Australia, so you can't be too upset. Elle Australia, the magazine. In 2011, Prince Harry took a trip to the North Pole where the extreme cold caused him to develop frostbite in, well, his South Pole.
Uh-huh.
My penis was oscillating between extremely sensitive and borderline traumatized, quote unquote, Prince Harry wrote in his memoir, which he later read aloud for the audiobook.
Oh, my.
Quote, I had been trying some home remedies, including one recommended by a friend, unquote. Quote continues, she'd urged me to apply Elizabeth Arden cream. Arden, I guess you would say in English. My mom used that on her lips. You want me to put that on my Todger? Quote ends. The magazine writer says, we'll spare you the nitty-gritty details, but Prince Harry then proceeded to apply the cream to the affected area while thinking about his dead mum, and then included in his incendiary book. That's the reference I made, and that's why I didn't go into it at length the other day. The writer Ava,
that may deserve a.
I think it does.
Yes.
But so many people asked, I had to bring it, full disclosure, because you make fun of me when we talk about girls with boobs or, booby pictures or other stuff. So here's a guy talking about his bloody Todger.
I've never heard that about Todgers.
You never heard that expression?
No.
Oh, well, you're not a boy. Even we Americans use that expression. Not as much, perhaps, as the Brits. Ava Gilchrist, probably in Australia, writing for Elle Australia. I'm sure the comments are flowing. In my opinion, him just dropped again, Atkins. Commodore Steve Atkins, yeah. David Niven dipped his affected area into a glass of brandy. Gordon Smith says, J. Frederick Bland, ew! What a knucklehead to write about his issues, Ed Worley is saying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Look at who he's married to, Jonathan Frank says. Well, she's apparently distancing herself. Do you see that, Julia? Distancing herself from his memoir, Spare.
Oh, yeah?
Spare. Okay, enough of that. A couple more, since this is a drinking show with a sailing habit. What we need here is an alcoholiday.
Mm-hmm.
The pirates say. Okay, that's Ed Worley sent that. That was one. Here's a great one. Thanks, Graham Sweeney. He sent this. Whenever I have a panic attack, I put a brown paper bag over my mouth and drink all the bourbon inside. It seems to help. Graham Sweeney sent that.
That's
okay,
a good one.
That's the funnies for the day.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Enough of all that. Julia, that gets us to the end for this show, number 587, to the finish line indeed. And we just want to thank everybody. It was a 2-hour and 15-minute show, and especially thank Beau Vrolyk. Comments are welcome too, Julia.
Yes, even in replay.
They are indeed. And you like to say to go back and read the comments.
Yeah, no, it is, especially if you think you've heard it the first time and you go back and read it and you miss lots of comments and
yeah, because we can't read them all.
Yeah,
obviously.
And it's fun. You can read them faster than you can listen to them.
Stingrays just put Ed Worley, thank you. Outstanding afternoon yet again. Thanks, Jonathan Frank. There's our pilot friend. Help us out. Give us $1 or $2 or $5. Become a patron via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Julia?
Yes.
Any final thoughts?
No, I think it's a good idea to help good old Sailing Illustrated.
Jonathan Frank saying, write that book, Julia. I think a lot of people hope Beau Vrolyk writes a book. Thierry Dion, thank you, sir. Thanks for a great show. Julia, I think the flags that I moved from behind me.
Yes.
I put this, what do you call this plant? A mother-in-law's tongue, but that's a nickname for it.
I don't know.
But I moved the flags over to you to give a little color in that negative space under your PIP, the picture-in-picture. I want to thank everybody who let us have video, especially that video from Sangmeister, and of course the video from Emmett, but a great piece of work Sangmeister gave us with that. Thank you guys.
Always, yeah.
And everybody else, pictures, audio, video for this show. And we want to thank Beau Vrolyk, who was on today on Friday as our guest, and we'll get him on again soon. He was terrific. We hope you have a great rest of your week. And if you're in Europe, you're probably about to go to bed. And if you're down under, you're just getting your Saturday underway. We hope you have a great time. And if you go sailing, we hope you can. We'll see you Tuesday. But in the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.